Welcome back to the program once again. And we're the Economic Preppers. I'm your host, as always, Jeff. We have Dylan and we have Patrick. I'll start with you, Dylan. How you doing this week?
I'm doing fantastic. Winter is back here in Colorado, so that means more time on the slopes before the season's over.
Yeah, more rain back on the Pacific Northwest, right, Patrick?
Yeah, the East Coast was pretty well this week. I went there this week. It was wonderful on the East Coast. Beautiful sunshine. I'll take that over this any day.
Yeah, but they're as always, we never lack for stories, it seems, around here. So now we got a ton of stuff to get into. We're going to jump right into it because the show's jam-packed. So let's lead off with the first story of many. There's lots going on in the U.S. as far as news. Speaker McCarthy's talking about and warning that Biden could bumble into the first default in U.S. history. That's just gonna slap him right in the face as we're heading. I think the debt ceiling is the next big topic that's going to be coming up. I think that's around June. Patrick, you're aware of this. Why don't you explain that a little bit more and what's your thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, my thoughts are pretty simple. We've known for a while that the debt ceiling is going to be reached. And what this means is that inherently we run out of the ability to pay federal and government employees. For example, maybe the FBI or other departments like Department of Homeland Security or other really important things that we need, like to keep our food assistance programs running and things of that nature. You basically have no ability to fulfill those obligations because you don't have a credit line left to spend from. And so what they're basically doing right now is ignoring the fact that they're going to run out of money and they're not going to be able to meet their needs. So what happens is they typically just wait till the last minute and overnight they pass some kind of bill with some kind of stimulus that gives people more money and will shut some people up and keep some people happy and bury a lot of junk in it. And who knows, maybe they'll ban rifles in there too. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I always like to make this correction: currency, not money, as we are all learning. So, Dylan, I see you're on top of that with the Bitcoin hat. Where are you at with the whole debt ceiling? Should they be raising it? Should they be taking the Republican stance of extending things for another year? What do you think?
I mean, I think they kind of have to raise the debt ceiling based on the system that they're operating out of. They've got to print continuously for forever because the debt is insolvent, right? U.S. debt, global debt is never going to be paid back. I think, so they have to keep doing it. So they have to do this kind of, dog and pony show to attract people's interest here. And there's really not a fix within the system. There's alternative systems that are working on fixing it, things like this. So we'll talk about later. But yeah, I think it's just something they have to do.
Yeah, and we're at the point where we're spending on an annual basis about what we used to spend. That was the whole deficit. Like the numbers are getting exponentially large and hard to even fathom. And it's leading all to inflation. But as part of inflation, I don't know if you guys remember, but a few months back, people were speculating that if they're not going to be raising the Fed has two options to control inflation. They can either raise the interest rates or they can try to influence unemployment to go up. So that kind of reflects where we're going with our next couple stories.
Well, that's really the only lever they can pull, really, right? They can't do anything other than increase the interest rate because they can't do anything about the demand in the market. So they're going to try to decrease the supply by making it more expensive for businesses to operate. When it costs them more money to roll over their debt, that means they have less employees, which is why you see all the layoffs.
Yeah. And that was really our story here. We got David's Bridal, and this is just one of them. There's 100 of these. I think there's 9,200 workers, and I think I caught this one because I think their staff was 13 or 14,000, 11,000 employees. 11,000 employees at 9,200. That's over 80% layoffs. Okay, and we're hearing story after story. I think that if you added them up in the last 6 months, there could be close to 1 million layoffs that have been announced across these different companies. And
this is just a one-off. It's because no one wants to get married anymore.
That is true, though. I mean, that marriage is a corrupted institution for most people.
Hey, careful, honey. Dylan's perspective doesn't mean that I agree with him.
I'm not saying I don't believe in what fundamentally it means.
Tell me you believe in my marriage, Dylan.
Say and to be committed to each other. I think there's beauty there, but I think for a lot of people, a lot of young men especially that aren't married, they're looking to get married. It's not the wisest idea, given the current situation that we're in and given the current laws around it. And I think that's, seeing the bridal shop close down. I think, that's a a sign that times have been changed. And I don't think it's changing for the better. I think the laws are stacked against people when it comes to marriage, and I think that's a problem. I think that's something that should be fixed and talked about more, because I do think, and the data is there that marriage.
Oh, Andrew Tate, if you're listening, please, you're welcome on the show at any time. We'd love to have that conversation. I think that would be a great one. But speaking from experience, as I've been down that road a few times, I find it very interesting that the tax code favors being married, and they make it very easy to get married. Just like they make it easy to procreate, but they don't make it easy to manage the after effect. Getting unmarried is much more difficult than getting married. So it's interesting that the legalities and the laws and the structure favors what they want. And first they want you to get married. Now they'd rather, have yourself become some kind of third gender that doesn't exist. So, but we're not going to go down that road. Let's get back to the U.S. news. And I got another one for you. Here's a quick question. How much is a postage stamp, guys? Do you know what the price of a postage stamp is today?
Like 30 something cents, maybe.
What? Were you just watching Seinfeld in the 90s? That's a little bit off.
A postage, just a stamp? A
stamp to mail.
No, man, I remember the Forever stamp. They were like 30 cents or something.
Well, that Forever, good job, but you beat inflation pretty well if you bought it in 30 cents.
Yeah, I have a bunch of those.
Dylan, what's your guess?
I was gonna say like 37 cents, but clearly.
Well, I remember when it passed 50 cents. 50 cents. I remember when it passed 50 cents, but now the price they're hiking up again to 66 cents, up from 63 cents. I had no idea across 60 cents. I had no idea.
A letter?
For a letter, first class mail is 66 cents. I had no idea, but I will tell you, I don't know when or what avenue I'm going to have this game, but we need to make a show. Like I was working out of the gym today. I saw the prices right, and I said, "This game is now impossible." I have no idea how much that bottle of ketchup is, because if I had said $2, that would probably been the price 3 months ago, and now it's
it depends on what size. I would have said about 4 to 6, depending on the size of the bottle.
But Patrick, we know with shrinkflation, right? We saw all those different size boxes.
I would like to play this game.
Guys, I was eating an Uncrustable today talking about shrinkflation, and I had one in my freezer from months ago, and I was like, I'm going to eat that Uncrustable. And then the new box arrived in my freezer recently, and I pulled them out. I pulled out 2 of them, and I was looking at one. I was like, oh, man, I thought this had more calories in it. And I found the one that was in my freezer from a while ago, and it was the new ones are 2 ounces. The old ones were 2.8 ounces. The new ones have 6 grams of protein. The old ones have 10. The new ones have 210 calories. The old ones have 320 calories. They look basically the exact same, but they're in the same package. Shrinkflation. I took a picture. I'll share that on social later on, but I saw it.
Uncrustables, you're unethical.
I shouldn't. I just, I didn't want it to go to waste,
Yeah, but that's how companies are. They're dealing with the price. Like we're all talking about inflation all the time, and they're just dealing with it that's one of the games that they play, right? They do different things because companies are feeling it too, and that leads us into our next topic with how corporate's doing and commercial real estate and real estate. As we get into that, this story has zero heads. U.S. banks lost money, although I have seen the big 6 or so reporting good earnings. So you have Bank of America and Wells Fargo putting up good numbers. I think even American Express did well, which is showing for credit. But U.S. banks lost money on mortgages. So we're talking about real estate now. Mortgages are being lost. And we're just seeing more and more ripples into like the different things that are impacting the commercial real estate. Guys, where's the bottom of this on this trend? I mean, real estate was the last bastion for wealth in the U.S., and now it seems to have gone completely in the rear direction. I know, Patrick, I'm going to share a story next for about the new mortgages, but what's your take on real estate right now?
I mean, I'm by no means a real estate expert, but what I can see is the prices are starting to come down. The concessions are coming up. So you're having to kind of agree to pay some seller or some closing fees and some costs at the end, maybe pay for the carpet or whatnot, when before you had a bidding war. So this is the temperature that we're in. And what I look forward to see coming is what they're going to do to try to stimulate mortgages.
Yeah, the stimulation of mortgages. I'm going to throw this to you, Dylan, because it's a bigger story. I don't know if you've heard about this new, they call it the LLPA, their loan level price adjustment. that starts on May 1st. So we're already working on timelines between now and August of how much stuff is going to happen. But have you heard about this, Dylan?
I don't know if it's the same thing. I heard something that it adjusts the rate based upon how qualified you are, and like
That's right.
to basically the lesser qualifications you have, the better rate you get.
Yes,
The more
exactly.
qualified you are, the worse rates you get. So
Yes.
it kind of reminds me of when I was a kid, and I had a brother that didn't perform well in school, but whenever he would get like a B on a test, he would get like something special, and I got A's on all my tests, and I got nothing. Just reminds me of that. I didn't like that. So it just but the bigger picture of this is you got to be really careful when you set incentives for complex systems, because I've been reading some books on AI, and the whole thing is talking about how do you align this incentives to the problem you want to be solved. Last thing you want is set incentive for one thing, but it solves another thing, and so the system gets optimized around something that you don't want, and that's what this seems like it's going to do.
Yeah, I'll definitely share my thoughts on this. But Patrick, you and I were talking about this earlier. What's your take on this LLPA subsidy project?
First, I want to recognize that Dylan was mistreated. That wasn't fair that Dylan got A's and never got anything for it. Dylan, if I was your dad, I would have gotten you lots of toys, candy, hugs. I'd bring pizza for lunch because you're a great kid. And if your parents are listening to this, I hope that they feel bad and that they make it up to you. Then what I feel about the loan stuff is like, this is a joke. I have been telling people that the whole reason to have good credit is so that you can get a loan. That's the only reason you need good credit if you want to like buy a house. That doesn't happen anymore. Why do you need good credit now?
You don't.
I'm really asking the question. Like, let's say the average American today decides, you know what? Instead of paying my bills for the next 2 months, I'm going to stack some silver and crypto, and I'm not going to pay my bills. And then they don't. And their credit goes down, and they catch up on their bill again, and they start making their payments again. So what? They missed a couple months, but they're back on track. They have some silver, have some gold. Their credit tanked, and they do it again. They take a skip pay. They don't pay their credit cards. No big deal. They let the interest rack up. Their credit goes down, but they've saved some more gold and silver and crypto. I don't understand. Where's the punishment for being a terrible creditor? If you're going to pay everyone back never or late, why would they loan to you? The whole idea was supposed to say how honest of a human being you were and how likely you were to make good on your payments.
Well,
now you don't have to.
Yeah, it's a two-stage thing. It's like focusing just on the LLPA, right? They're creating another 2008 situation. This is really 2005, where they have the ninja loans, the no doc loans, the stated income loans, where you could just basically write your own mortgage. You could literally. I remember when I was a real estate investor back then, people were saying you should become a mortgage broker and just write your own loans. I'm like, that doesn't sound right. but that's what people were doing, and now we're at the point where we are having the wealthy subsidize those that are, I'll say, with bad credit. But they're incentivizing, hey, bad credit person, do you want a house? Here's how you get in, and they won't worry about the rate. They'll worry about the payment, and then that's basically selling a car. That's what they're going to do. They're going to put people in houses, and then 2 or 3 years later, like what happened in 2008, the bubble will pop. They'll lose their job, or something will happen to them, and they won't be able to make their payments. There'll be a glut of real estate in the market. But these companies are trying to survive by lending because there's no one borrowing right now, so they have to appeal to these weaker creditors, much like in the Big Short, where that's exactly what I never get Michael Burry or Mike. I think that's right. Michael. Michael Burry. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's what he picked up on, and he said these AAA bonds aren't what they're saying that they are. So we have all these things that are teetering all around, and we have commercial real estate. We have the existing real estate. Everybody thought, real estate never goes down until it does, and that's what happened in 2008. And now we're setting the temperature to be right there again. So yeah, it's and we've got all these different issues that are out there. It's really interesting to piece them all together. But that's kind of what's going on with real estate. Let me catch the other story here.
And I just been talking the credit thing, and like, to be fair, I understand why maybe where some of the sentiment can come from is that part of the reason why credit card debt's at all-time highs, because everything, like all the prices have been manipulated, have all been messed with this massive money printing, and then all of a sudden these massive rate changes. There's no way that the average person can predict and prepare for this, and so it's causing them to have to spend more money than they thought they'd have to spend. I mean, just even look at my Uncrustables. Right? You're paying the
Well,
same for 30% less.
exactly. And look at, like, as we mentioned earlier, American Express had a great quarter on record earnings because people are borrowing and they can't pay off their, even American Express, where you have to pay it off anyway. I think it's like 30 days you have to pay that off, but Visa and MasterCard, you can let them go so you have, like, you don't have to pay everything off that month. But yeah, people are living on credit right now until they run out, and like the Price is Right is impossible now. It was
I had a
really
buddy who missed the payment on his Costco credit card, the Citi card, and it went up to like 30 something percent interest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They increased his interest rate.
Well, the other bubble that's another bubble that's getting ready to pop is as we were mentioning, the commercial real estate.
Yeah.
And everybody's talking about, can we just get to 2025? Because I think it's the numbers in the trillions.
They're coming due.
Yeah. Again, the commercial real estate, there it is. 1.5 trillion in commercial real estate debt comes due in the next 3 years. So the mantra is survive to 2025. Dylan, think that's reasonable for commercial real estate to survive another 2.5 years in this present world?
Oh man, that seems like a long time. That seems like a very long time. A lot can go wrong, or a lot can happen in that amount of time.
Yeah, just rewind 3 years, right? I mean, just look what happened 3 years ago.
Yeah,
let's
exactly.
take a step back though. If we reach a place where hyperinflation really starts to occur and your home ends up worth $1 million, you could take a loan against that asset and basically do what the government's doing, because you keep borrowing from the value of your assets. If they're going to keep letting people who have no credit take loans, the cycle, basically, you've turned every consumer into the same kind of cycle that the government is they're going to be enslaved in more debt and using debt to live their life. And the debt will only be able to happen if they have assets. That's the way they're going to survive this crazy commercial industry. The McDonald's of the world are going to need the value of their properties to increase so they could take loans against a property to pay off other properties. And that's what they'll do. That's how I see it working and not collapsing.
Yeah, the problem is they keep borrowing from the future to pay for the present until they can't find anyone to buy from the future anymore. And that's what that's the Ponzi scheme. That's entirely fiat. That's where we're at. So
the problem is like, if the asset value collapses, like, because
then they're done.
If these commercial properties, can't sustain that asset value because they don't have tenants in there and there's no one buying it, right? They don't have business or commerce coming in, then anything that they have leveraged up on there is going to start becoming due, because the asset value collapses in the margin. It doesn't make the margin, and they get the margin calls. And
then the derivatives collapse. And then it's a done deal. Then we're right back at it again. So there we go. That's what's coming, guys.
Well, yeah. I think George Gammon had a video on this. I think it was last week. And he mentioned some guy who it was some billionaire that had been in this market. And the guy was basically saying that, like, they're going to have to start tearing down these buildings because it's not even cost effective to convert them to residential if you have a major commercial collapse, or if there's no demand for these buildings in these cities. They're going to have to like tear them down or do something, just because they won't be able to be used for what they were built for in the first place.
Well, we have a company right down the road. They closed down. They were called Mega Foods, and Mega Foods was sold out. And right now they're in the process of trying to convert it into apartments, but the city is kind of giving them issues. So even if you have the resources to convert, you may not have the ability to do it because of zoning restrictions. This seems to me like right in line of the whole 15-minute city agenda.
Yeah, I think they're going to have to rezone a lot of the commercial spaces or make it at least mixed use. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think you're right. But I think you mentioned derivatives, Patrick. I think it's a time here that I don't think we've ever shared this in the show, but this is called Exter's Pyramid. And this goes on, you can go from the higher risk of default from bottom up. And on the right side, you got from the top down is the lower risk of default. You gold and fiat money, and then the government bonds and treasury bills that we talk about. Then corporate bonds, so you have corporate lending and their stocks. Then you have non-monetary commodities and private business and real estate. And these are bigger and bigger markets, but they all pivot on this point. So derivatives are at the top in the U.S. The unfunded government liabilities, I think the number is, I think that we have a deficit of 31 trillion, but we have like 150 trillion more between welfare and Medicaid and military salaries. So that is way like double the GDP. I mean, it's way out of line. So the Doritos is just the top 2 or 3 can easily swing and just teeter and just knock this whole system over. And they're just shuffling it around to try and make it last. It's going to be interesting to watch. But as we round out our final U.S. story, we kind of turn the page now over to world events. So the first world event story is kind of a mixture of the two. And that's one where I don't know if you guys have heard this story yet, but we had the U.S. warns that Russia is not supposed to touch sensitive locations in the Ukraine because U.S. sensitive nuclear secrets apparently are there. Patrick, did you get wind of that, for lack of a better term?
No, I haven't seen this specific article or any specific news release like that, but does this really surprise us? I feel like we've talked about this a lot when it comes to Ukraine and why we're really in Ukraine and what's really happening in Ukraine. So this seems rather on point to me.
Yeah. Dylan, what's your take on the U.S. having military secrets in the Ukraine? That doesn't seem to make sense for security or any reason whatsoever.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it makes sense, but
it does make sense. You talked about it.
I talked about it.
No, Dylan, Jeff did. We've talked about this on the show before. You think that there's a bunch of documents and stuff that they're trying to go get out of Ukraine, and that's why they're actually there. They're trying to get proof for something. So, sure, it doesn't surprise me that they're saying don't go to those places because that's whatever, because that's where they don't want you to go. That sounds about right. No, honey, there's nothing under the bed. Don't look there. It's just my sensitive secret crypto documents.
Well,
okay, we won't look there.
Well, it's interesting because I did hear a rumor, and I guess we call it bucket 2 or bucket 3 because it's not a fact yet. But in Ukraine, that's where Chernobyl was. Chernobyl has a keep out area that's allegedly irradiated for people not to go in. So if you have a keep out military guarded area, what better place to secure things that you don't want anybody to know about? Say maybe a server or two or something that might hold 33,000 emails. That's the rumor. Patrick, you're looking. You're trying to piece it together. Yes. Man. So that's allegedly where one of the locations where the former Secretary of State and the senator from New York. Like I'm trying not to be Killer Reed here.
That must also be where a certain particular non-living person's client list is as well that we haven't seen.
Yes, maybe that's where a manifesto might be too. All the things that we haven't seen yet, but we get. We see all these disasters. They just pick and choose which ones they want to cover and which ones they want to talk about. But let's talk about the next story here.
It's very possible that the fruit of the vine is also there. I'm just making up something since you guys are all speaking in code, since half of it went over my head anyways. Okay, you guys are like, really, you can't do code with me. That doesn't work. What are you saying right now? 33,000 emails. Is that relating to our ex-president's wife?
Correct.
Okay, and then Dylan, what the hell did you say?
Just that this person definitely did not kill himself.
Oh, that list. Got it.
Yeah. There you go.
Thank you for clearing it up for our viewers. I appreciate it. This would be the time to like, share, subscribe, and thumbs up if I clarified that for you as well.
Yeah. Well, all right. The next story, speaking of things that might be done in code, the FBI arrested 2 people in Manhattan for conspiring to act as CCP spies operating in a illegal police station. I think was this in New York? Yeah, it was in New York. Of course, it was
Zero Hedge.
So yeah, so it was in New York, and I think we
that's pretty reputable. I don't know.
I've heard I've heard that there's many of these all over the U.S. and in different cities. I think I saw this tweet here. I think this is the right tweet. 40 officers of China's National Police charged in transnational repression schemes targeting U.S. residents. So, is China operating a police force on foreign soil? That's the question. So, Patrick, what do you think? Yes or no?
I mean, probably. If I were any nation, I would have intelligence like that embedded in the community. So I think it's reasonable to assume that that's occurring.
Dylan, what's your take? And do you think it's more effective than flying random balloons around the cities?
I mean, I think you got to cover all your bases. Why not? Why not have multiple strategies, diversify your sources of intel? And like it seems totally plausible. Like, I'm not surprised at all. Like I would do that if I were a big government. I would have stations, a sandwich shop set up in certain places to spy on them. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, and it's with so much investment from China and the U.S. on stateside, it wouldn't be a surprise at all for them to protect their interests, to put certain people here, foreign nationals. They get in pretty easily into the country these days, and of course they're there. But all these different stories, everything we've talked about so far, leads to stories like this one, which is talking about the everything collapse, first gradually, then suddenly. Is the system doomed? Is essentially is like. Is there a safe haven? So the global debt is now like every so often, every major occurrence that goes up 50 to 100 times of global debt. Are we looking at a potential 3 quadrillion in debt that could be on the horizon? And will that be a result of, or how do we get there? I mean, is it going to be hyperinflation? Is it going to be they're printing money? Is it a little bit of both? Dylan, what's your take on where we're heading? And are we heading into that hyperinflation event?
Oh man, I think we are. I don't want it. I don't want that to happen. Because that's not a good scenario for anyone. But I think the best scenario would be that the can keeps getting kicked down the road, and that the current system is not fully destabilized. You know, I see all these people talking about, everything collapsing, everything falling apart, and like that's the last thing you want. Ideally, it just keeps getting kicked down the road. And other systems that run parallel to it but aren't connected, such like Bitcoin, get stronger and stronger and stronger. So when a collapse, or if a collapse does occur, the alternative systems are strong enough to support whoever needs to be there and whatever type of infrastructure and industry needs to be there. So ideally, I hope the can keeps getting kicked down the road. I don't know if that's possible, but that's what I hope.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of hopium. Patrick, what's your take on how this could play out?
So you asked 2 questions. The first question was, do I think that it's inevitable that this destruction will happen? Yeah, I do. I believe that inevitably there's no way that we can keep the dollar as strong as it is, buying what it is buying us. It's just not working, and the writing is on the wall globally. So yes, I see failure coming very soon. What that looks like is the next question you see. Is there hope? There is hope. And what Dylan talked about was in some of these asset classes that historically gold and silver, and even currently Bitcoin, are allowing us some kind of versatile change from the current system, right? We don't have to rely on the 401k systems anymore to produce us wealth. We've got certain projects that can stake and create value. But what I really see happening here is the question of, do I see hyperinflation coming? It comes down to one simple answer to me. It's the Fed. The Fed has all of the control right here. And with interest rates, if they push a little bit too hard, they're going to cause a crash. If they back things up too much, there's going to be a ridiculous deflationary aspect, which we're starting to see already in certain areas, that will eventually lead to hyperinflation. So the question's not really if, it's when. When the dollar crashes, there's no way to prevent the hyperinflation that we're going to be seeing. And as that occurs, that will only be a symptom, a byproduct, as you say, of the damaging effects of printing and printing and printing and raising the ceilings and adding stimulus and sending out money to everyone in the system, and anyone who might even not be in the system but has a name close to the system. They'll send you money too, and they'll give you as much as you need to buy whatever home you want for whatever price, because it doesn't matter if you have bad credit. These are ridiculous actions, especially regulatory actions, that you're seeing that are not going to allow us to win. This is setting us up for failure. The banks are setting us up for failure, and we're being set up to act just like the banks. Borrow as much as you can until you can't afford it anymore. But guess what? There's no one to bail you out.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, Patrick. That was well said. You got to follow what other people are. You got to follow what other people are doing. Like you learn, like there's no sense of reinvent the wheel. The wealthy do certain things, but the one thing is that most people made their wealth in the 20th century through real estate. Now that's becoming the last bastion of hope, and it's not really going to be there anymore. So they're going to keep printing and printing. But there are other events, and this is all intertwined. This is kind of why our show exists. We can tie real estate to world events and U.S. events and crypto. And now here's another story about, like, on the world stage as we're talking now, here's a crypto story, right? We have a story that came out. We have another currency that's on the horizon from the Bank of International Settlements. So this is called Project Icebreaker. So they just completed this project. This is a I'll say it's the CBDC of CBDCs. They're calling it like the reserve CBDC or the RCBDC because we needed more abbreviations than letters and things that are impossible to pronounce. But basically, this is another central bank currency that the Bank of International Settlements is putting on top of SWIFT, on top of the banking system, and allows like Germany to trade, the Germany central bank to trade with the U.S. and settle with this coin now. So, Patrick, is it going to work?
So I don't know. What I will say is if you guys haven't watched Jeff's video that he put out a couple of days ago, it was extremely thought-provoking and very bucket one. And I shared it with some friends of mine. The idea of a like new one world currency, like a currency to rule them all, sounds very Lord of the Rings, but also sounds like it's what I'm expecting. So this is definitely the kind of poison pill that I'm watching for, and I'm going to stay so far away from it, but I'm going to try to know as much as I can about it. This sounds like something super evil. Like, I can't explain it to you why I feel that way, but this is like, if there was the most crap coin project of the whole world, this is like the crappiest, most evil of all of them. That's how my heart feels about it. Is that good enough? I don't have any good proof except for that guy is such a jerk. This huge fat man wants to stop us from eating food. Who is this guy to stop telling us from eating food? He wants to stop food production. This guy sucks. I don't like him. I hate everything they do. That's how I feel. Yeah,
I'll bring up the picture of the president of the BIS, but you did not introduce me to share. And you're kind and you're kind to queue it up to share my channel. But now you call me a fat guy, so I'm not sure.
No, not you. That guy from the BIS. You know who I'm talking about.
I know who you're talking about, but it's this video here, the new world currency. What is it and when? I'll put it in the show notes.
Whoa, bro, you have lost some weight, haven't you? Yeah. Hey, Gabe, if you're watching our show, good job training him. Heck yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about there. Too close. But Dylan, I know you haven't heard too much of this project, but do you think that a central bank digital currency on top of a central bank digital currency, is that the kind of sandwich you'd like to eat?
Definitely not. I mean, you know, there's everyone talk about Metcalfe's law, which is like the value of a network is the square of the number of users. And so, like, if you're looking for control, the more users you can add to your network, the more control you have, right? The more people you can influence. And if you have something that you can pull all the levers to, it basically makes you God of that network. And, you know, we know these institutions are corrupt. So the last thing we want them to do is be the God of some network that we're all subservient to, that we're all dependent on. And that's what this sounds like, right? They're trying to exert as much control as possible by putting these central bank digital currencies to just get into as many people's hands as possible so that as many people as possible are dependent on them. And that's not good. That's why we want something decentralized where there's no like one set of rulers that we have to be subservient to.
It's almost worse than that because they're drawing attention to themselves. Like, but it's good soon. Like, virtually no one on the planet knows who the Bank of International Settlement is, or who the fat president is. The jab of the bank, there, guys. But
jab of the bank.
but now they're drawing attention to it. Like, oh, not only going to talk about CBDCs, but they're going to bring Bank of International Settlements and the IMF into the equation. They're like, what's up with them, and why did El Salvador pay off their debt to the International Monetary Fund that is the loan arm from the Bank of International Settlements? So people are going to get educated about this stuff real fast. So it's going to be really interesting how it plays out. But now it's time, turn the page once again, another topic. Now we're going to talk to getting prepared for all the stuff we've heard about and how if it's possible. So we're going to talk about crypto. We're talking about crypto in the next section, and we're going to talk about gold and silver, and also preparing in general from this section. But yet another story that ties everything together. This one again from Zero Hedge. I'm using a lot of Zero Hedge this week, but they're on top of things. So this story is about the rise of the petro yuan, the end of the petrodollar, and the impact of global markets. But if you dig deeper into this story, did you know that the central banks have bought more gold last year than any year in the past 55 years since 1967? Which is interesting because, in short, 1967 was the beginning of the end of the Bretton Woods, which was 1944, which established the U.S. as the reserve currency for the world at the end of World War II. So here's the chart, the central bank holdings of gold. Here is the 1967, huge spike, not even close since then until now. Now everybody wants gold. So I know that they have speculation as to why, but Patrick, you're you're a precious metals bug here. You want to tell us a little bit why would a central bank be stockpiling precious metals?
I wonder why. It sounds to me like what we're seeing are China, Japan, Russia dumping US treasuries. And what are they selling their dollars and getting instead? Gold. I wonder why they're getting gold. Maybe it's because they have a ruble that's backed by the gold. Maybe it's because they're getting ready to do something in Durban in August and they need to be able to show they have a reserve of gold that backs up some digital currency that they're releasing as the new Petro standard. That will be, it'll be called the Petro. That, maybe because of Vladimir Vladimirovich, we'll call it the Petra, right? Like, I don't know, but it'll be something that's going to be backed by something the whole world values, and it will be gold. I believe that's coming. We've seen a lot of crypto projects try to emulate that as well, because everyone knows that something that is backed by value, by true tangible value, is something that you could use. It has utility. It's going to be widely accepted. So therefore, I suspect what you see happening is the devaluation of the dollar. The dollar is going straight to gold so they can be ready to prop up whatever game they've got coming on in August is. That's total hypothesis. I have no clue, but one thing is very clear. Bucket one, they have been buying more gold than ever before. And that is causing some shifts in our economy right now in the price of gold. We're hitting all-time highs. Silver is going to go up above 50 very soon for silver eagles is what they're costing. So I don't know, guys. You tell me what's going on.
Yeah, Dylan, is this a signal that central banks are bailing on the fiat system and moving towards the harder, more stable, more accepted form of money over the last thousands of years?
I think it can be seen that way. I think, one way to also see it is that they are sensing more volatility in the markets. And if you are seeing that and you're seeing, China start to exert itself as a world power, as a major contender, we're seeing shakeups there that, and trade partners are shaking up and things like that. Like that just indicates there's going to be some volatility. And so perhaps this acquisition of gold is just kind of, stocking up before the winter, right? Stocking up before, a storm coming. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that there'll be a transition to a gold standard, but, just with gold's history, it's not a bad thing to have on hand when times are looking more volatile and uncertain.
Especially if they revalue their currency in a different gold ratio globally, sending it gold going up to like $30,000 an ounce. This is the system we've talked about before. There's so much opportunity. When you manipulate the price of gold, you manipulate the price of every asset in the world. I mean, really, this is the kind of stuff that impacts the DXY. And that DXY impacts every stock out there. This is the kind of stuff that takes away wealth suddenly, slowly, then very suddenly. This is, okay, so what can you do? No more doom and gloom. What can we do about it? Go get yourself some physical silver. That's one thing you could do right now. Go to the store, find your local coin shop, make relationships, and start buying this stuff, especially when you notice the price and you see a dip. Execute, pull the trigger, be done. Be ready for the storm that's coming. I don't know if I'll ever need it. It's an insurance policy, but if it's coming and I need it, I'm going to feel pretty happy. I just don't see myself being upset for squirreling a little bit of silver and gold away.
Yeah, I think that a couple of things that both of you guys hit on that I wanted to extract and continue the conversation there. The store thing about getting to know your store, you want to know that what they did, because if you're going to sell it or convert it, you want to know where you're going to be able to convert it. Your local gold, silver, precious metals coin shop is going to be the place to do that. Volatility, Dylan, you mentioned volatility. It's interesting. I saw that, we'll talk about Bitcoin a little bit later, but Bitcoin is actually now less volatile than the S&P 500. That recently was just talked about. So volatility does not reflect, the risk, the risk opportunity there. But the biggest thing that I caught on Patrick when he's like, converting fiat into a tangible asset. Well, there's an argument that people make against Bitcoin because it's not a tangible asset. That is actually technically not true, because the network is a tangible asset, and that's what's backing Bitcoin. Everyone that's running miners, all that capital equipment, all that electricity, which isn't as much as they think it is, that's consumed, and everything that all the equipment that's done to invest in the network, that is what's backing Bitcoin. So like that's more strength and power than than several fiats that are on the planet. The U.S. is backed by military might that's shrinking, but that's one of the impacts that does back it and enforces it around the globe. But Bitcoin does have a tangible asset. Bitcoin itself is not tangible, but the network behind it is. So I wanted to highlight those things, and great job, guys, covering that. It's a tough topic because we've got all these different currency wars that are going to be happening next 6 months. We know they're on the horizon. We've got the BRICS that are going to launch one in August. We got another one that the BIS wants to launch, and all these CBDCs. Like we had virtually no one alive has seen this kind of thing happen before. And most people are no longer around that saw Bretton Woods happen. And here we see, we've seen Zimbabwe, we've seen other currencies, but they were smaller countries. They're countries' currencies that went down, not a global reserve currency or the G7 or Asia and the BRICS nations getting together and making another currency.
Or Sudan. You called Sudan the week before it happened. That was so legit. I was like, holy crap. I know exactly what's going on there. Jeff just talked about that. That's on that list.
Yep,
and then you asked the question. Did you see how I answered it right away? I knew the answer.
Bucket one.
That was bucket one, bro. That's bucket one. That was cool. I like that. I was so excited when Sudan was struggling. I didn't want it to come out that way. Sadly, you were correct.
With that lovely transition, let's turn the page to someone who's runs across several different topics that we talk about. He's influential in crypto. He's on social networks. He talks about US. He talks about world events. So Elon Musk did a very interesting interview, several interesting interviews lately. But the one topic I wanted to talk about that I think it was either on Tucker Carlson or their BBC show. Plenty of them were lots of good clips out of that. But let's see, this story was talking about Elon says that U.S. government has access to private Twitter DMs. That's only some of what that's out there. But the way I wanted to look at this is that, what is the ramifications of all this of Twitter having this access? And, is this going to lead us down to is this going to accelerate the path to Web 3.0? That was my question. Is the private information that's out there and you're protecting your sources, and what's going to probably come out of here is that all the different people that had different conversations that thought that were private but aren't on these social platforms, are we going to lose these social platforms? Or are we going to see decentralized social platforms that are going to rise? There are some projects that are out there that do that, but is Web 3.0 going to accelerate because of this? Dylan, I see you nodding your head. I'd love to get your take on that.
Yeah, I think there's probably a distinction between Web 3 and certain decentralized social media platforms. They don't necessarily mean the same thing. I think that's important. There's a Web 3 narrative being pushed by a lot of these kind of venture-backed crypto projects that's not necessarily as decentralized as you might think. And so there's that. But then there's projects like Nostr out there. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. It's like Twitter, but fully decentralized, and it's still early on, but it allows just a decentralized communication across the social network, which is pretty cool. So I think there's going to be that kind of stuff moving into the space. I mean, if companies get CEOs like Elon Musk start taking over, and like, hey, we don't want this a part of our company, then you'll see some of those government tendrils maybe be exposed or pushed out. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, I think it's surprising that someone would think that their DMs are encrypted on any sort of social media platform. That seems like a risk that you shouldn't really take if you're discussing sensitive information. You got to be careful with who you message on social media. But it's not surprising the government had access to these things as well.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that the distinction between the three different layers of web what they're talking about, Web 3.0. Real quickly, Web 1.0 is the early version of the internet where you can only read it, so it's read only. Web 2.0 is read and write. You provide information to websites, but they own that data that you provide. and now we're looking at read, write, and own. You would own the data. You decide who gets it, who gets shared with, and what you want, like medical records, personal information, credit cards, addresses, that kind of stuff. So, Patrick, have we lost? And I'll open it up to everything that Elon said last week. Have we, how much did you agree with what Elon's talking about? There was so much to talk about, but are we heading towards Web 3.0, or have we lost control of these networks? What's your take on all those things?
So the way I really feel about this entire topic is we should always be operating under the assumption that anything we do and say online can and will be used against us. So again, there's a reason why I tell everybody on this show that I'll never tell everybody the exact truth. You must not reveal the things online that keep you and your family safe. I don't know what else to say about that. So the idea for me is that should anyone go through and get all of my Facebook messages, yeah, some of my friends may be a little butthurt that I spoke some crap about them, but that would be about the worst that would happen to me, right? Like my wife isn't going to find out like I'm cheating on her or something. Go ahead, go through my phones, go through everything. I'm not worried about what financial information you might find on my phone. It's not there. I don't care. My social security number is 312-675246. I don't care that you know that, because I know that you could try to go open up a bank account. Well, maybe now, since they don't care if you have bad credit, maybe you can get a loan under my name. I don't know anymore. But the reality is, like, I don't care about the government systems. And what I see happening now is them just trying to bait people into putting their personal information into a different method. And I think that the best way to keep your private, personal, secure data is completely off of any system, period, because all systems are corruptible. And the best way to keep a secret, the most impervious, like to hack way to do anything, is write down everything and store it somewhere safely and don't tell anyone about it. There's nothing to attack. They don't know it exists. There's no account to log into. There's nothing to censor. It doesn't exist. Let them take away all of your emails about how funny you thought that cat video wasn't.
Well, before we get further deeper into the crypto stories, I wanted to go back a little bit and talk about what else we could do to prepare. So I know that Dylan, you talked about this particular product recently. Do I pronounce it Whoop or
Whoop? Yeah. This is our token prepper item, useful item. So I just got one of these things, and this is all about your health. So there's a lot of these kind of tools and things out there. Now, if you don't want to share your data, just like we talked about, then I would say don't do anything with these types of products and services. But on the flip side, technology has given us so many opportunities to better understand our own health and well-being, and to get insights that we wouldn't have had before at our fingertips. And while this isn't necessary, a device like this, it helps show you, like, what are you doing on a daily basis to make yourself strong and healthy? Are you overworking yourself? Are you not getting enough sleep? Right? Is your heart rate out of whack for some reason, which could indicate a coming sickness, or there's something wrong. So it's just giving you insight and awareness to your body that you might not notice when you're busy with your daily life, or that you might want to have if you're training, if you want to be the healthiest and best version of yourself. So I personally think it's really cool. I've been playing around with it, checking the data. But it's something that, you can consider. And even if you don't want to go that full technology route and provide that type of data to these services, maybe even just realizing that this stuff is out there and paying attention to these things could be very important. Because, we saw with the past 3 years, when there was the global thing, whatever you want to call it.
That's that shutdown thing.
Yeah.
Oh. I was like, the global thing?
Yeah,
You're gonna make me pick that? Pictionary with you would suck.
If you were tracking your health and paying attention.
All right, you got to solve that.
Mr.
First
Global
off,
thing.
he's not drawing anything, so I don't know how Pictionary applies, but that's we all laughed. One of those games with describing stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, Dylan it's 420 and Dylan must have done something to himself. I don't know what he's
Oh,
doing.
well, we'll get to 420 in a little bit.
Tracking my data, tracking my health and fitness data. The whole point is you can get alerted to insights about your health and well-being before it becomes an issue. And so you can take proactive steps and measures to correct that, which I think is really important. So that's why I want to share that, and it's out there.
I don't disagree. I use an Apple Watch to also take care of my body, and it tells me when to be mindful. I just want to say that the difference between using the tool and being okay with it, knowing that you're probably giving up whatever information you put into the system. So that's all you have to be aware of. Just don't be surprised when you're like, I can't believe they took my data to market to me. That was so incredibly rude. Like, no, it's going to happen. If you give them data, expect it to be used for marketing to you, for other purposes other than just your health data.
Yeah, that's something to think about, because every time you provide information and you do it all day long, think about where that's going. But that's a trade-off you make. If it encourages you to exercise and get fit, one of the best ways, we talk about wealth all the time, one of the best wealths you have is your own physical well-being and your health and investing in yourself. So if that's going to encourage you to better yourself, then that's probably a good trade-off for you. But you need to be mindful of what you are sharing and what could come back, and just be mindful of it and just how much it happens, because it happens all the time, whether you're on TikTok or you're not. So now let's dive in. Let's go ahead and dive into crypto now. We got plenty of crypto stories there. I heard a story, I think it was from Modern Investor first shared this with me, and well, not directly through, I caught a video from him. He said, I know you guys, we talked about this before the show, so we know, I'll let the viewers guess this number, but there's roughly 20 million of 21 million Bitcoin created at this point or minted. Several have been lost. The number keeps increasing on this estimates, but think about it, it's actually in the millions. So here's the exercise here. It's actually up to 6 million that believe is Bitcoin is lost. Now, Patrick, I know that you were a miner. Do you think that this number is accurate? High, low? What do you think?
Based on the numbers I've been hearing, that's high.
Okay.
I heard it was closer to 3 million to 2 million. And that's only because some people are putting data in that speculates since the Bitcoin hasn't moved, therefore it's lost. So I don't believe that narrative. I think the Bitcoin hasn't moved because the person that owns it is very smart.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, you can look into different addresses and wallets and see the last time an activity happened. So that's where he's saying it hasn't moved, or it has it's dormant. Satoshi allegedly has a wallet full of, I think, 1 million of them of Bitcoin.
Or people say, well, it's never been added to or been transacted since. So there are lots of people who have physical tokens just like this that will never move the Bitcoin off of this physical asset. Why would you do that? It would completely take away from the value of these coins. And so there's so many different assets just like that. They don't put everything in one place. They'll put a Bitcoin, they'll stack it, they'll get another Ballet wallet, they'll stack another Bitcoin, and it won't move for years because that's the nature of what they're doing. So this is probably too high for me, but yeah, that's just too high for me in my opinion, but I'd like to see the data on that, I guess.
Yeah, Dylan, what's your take on it? You think it's closer to 6, closer to 3? And then what's the ramifications of them losing 15 to 30% of the total population?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds high from the numbers that I've heard, but I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, I know if you include Satoshi's 1 million, I had heard around 3 million lost, and with Satoshi's 1 million, you're around 4 million. 21 million minus that of total Bitcoin ever to be in circulation. But I think what the saying is that if you lose your Bitcoin, you take it to your grave, it's a gift to everyone else that's a part of the network, because you're permanently removing that from circulation. So it makes, if you own one Bitcoin, instead of owning 1/21 millionth of the network, right? You own if it's 4 million, you own 1/17 million of the network.
There is no way Satoshi dies and leaves a million Bitcoin. There's no way. Satoshi is going to do something with that Bitcoin. I'm calling it right now. There will be some kind of release or airdrop or something he will do to give back this money to the community.
But he's already given back to the community by taking it off the market.
Have you guys ever watched Mr. Robot?
Dylan, that's a great perspective. No, I'm still processing Dylan's answer. That was a great answer, Dylan. He is adding a lot of value by locking it up forever.
He is.
But Satoshi, please don't do that. Do something exciting. Like move it once, or please just do something. I don't care. Just move it one time to a different wallet. Just let us know. Just do it.
Yeah, well, your gift of an airdrop reminded me of Mr. Robot, which is a big scene in that. But there is a company that created eCoin, so it's a very interesting parallel television show that was out there for 4 seasons. I think it was on USA, and it was very good, very, very well done. And I highly recommend you watching that one. But yeah, if it hasn't moved, it hasn't moved. But we've got I think 4 more crypto stories. I'm going to group them into a batch of 2 each. We have 2 on the international and 2 on the domestic. First off, Hong Kong court recognizes crypto as property. Meanwhile, we've got Russia back again. Russia plans to mine crypto for cross-border deals because they announced last night. Come on. Russia prepares to draft law to allow crypto for international trade. Apparently, they're going to allow crypto. They don't want crypto to be used inside of Russia borders, but it's fine for international trade. So who wants to take the Hong Kong? Who wants to take the Russia part?
I'll take either one. Dylan, go first. Beauty before age, for sure.
You can comment on either one. That's fine.
Yeah. So I think
I like that answer better.
I want to comment on just the headline when they say crypto, right? It's always important to read in what are they talking about, because that's used as a catch-all. And there are differences, and when it says Russia's mining crypto, right? They're probably mining Bitcoin. They could be mining other things like Litecoin's mine. There's a few other ones out there, but it's probably something along that line. So that's always good to dive in and find that clarification there. But it makes sense. Like Russia would want to leverage something like Bitcoin for international settlements because it's instantaneous, right? There's no counterparty risk, and it's simple. It's like, all right, like you have something I want, I'll give you Bitcoin that we have, that we've mined from our abundance of natural resources and energy. It makes sense that they would start making those trades. It's a smart move. And if the US is listening, which like we talked about, they probably are, you need to start doing this as well. For every country, like we see like that, it's becoming more and more important. And then if you read Jason Lowery's book, Soft War, he outlines the defense case for this, that it becomes strategically important to start acquiring Bitcoin. And because once someone does it, you don't want to be the second one to do it. Right, you don't want to be put at a disadvantage when that happens. So it makes sense that that's happening.
Yeah, and again, follow what the wealthy do, follow what the countries do. Getting exposure to Bitcoin, even if you don't know how to do it, 3 guys here that know how to do it. You can reach out to us to help you get started with Bitcoin. But Patrick, we got 2 stories there: Hong Kong, Russia. Lots to talk. You can talk about either one.
I think they'd both like my shirt. Right? Because that's the reality is globally they're acquiring gold and Bitcoin. I wonder what we should be doing. Guys, like the smart money moves first. And we're not going to get it all right. But I really hope that you guys are like hearing what we're saying, because this is not us conjecturing. This is us sharing the news. And we're connecting dots for sure. Maybe we're a little bit speculating. And I'm sure maybe some of our ideas and hypotheses will be proved wrong or incorrect. But the reality is it's going to be pretty dang close to what we're thinking. And I'd prepare if I were you. Like, this is not going to look pretty. This summer, this next Christmas is the one I'm like, my head goes to Christmas. I love Christmas. And I always think about the kids. And for me, everything I do is all about the kids. And I don't care what's happening in Russia or China so much as how it impacts my family. And I'd be really concerned if you have children. Like, what are we going to do? You're responsible for those kids. So grow up, dads and moms, and act responsible if you're listening to this.
It's getting harder and harder for those moms and dads to take care of things. But I think you got to tear it down for us to build up something better. But moving towards the domestic side of crypto, we had 2 interesting stories and a lovely back and forth on Twitter with Mr. Ginsler. But before we get to that one, let me share this. This is a site that policymakers that Coinbase has to talk about, like, I think we talked about this in the show before. I think Dylan, you might have talked about it.
Yeah.
We're interested in knowing what their stance is on these policymakers, these people that are running for office. What's their sentiment on crypto? I think there are people that vote on one issue, and one issue is important to us or important to them, whatever it may be. But crypto is becoming that a key portion of who am I going to vote for. So here it is right from Coinbase that they're looking at all the different states, all the different people, and what their sentiment is for crypto. So Dylan, you brought this to our attention first. You brought the top. You go ahead and lead off this conversation.
Yeah. So just one thing to keep in mind. I think that's good that we're seeing that transparency. There's companies out there doing that, but I also think there's some risk here that you need to pay attention to. Is these politicians, right? They do whatever they can to get the votes, right? And so many of them are bought and paid off by different special interest groups. And just because they're pro crypto doesn't mean that they don't fall into that same boat, right? That they are basically paid to represent certain interests. And there's a lot of money that has went to the crypto space over the past few years. I mean, it grew massive, and we saw what happened with FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried. He was literally paying off people to get favorable rulings for his interests, and he would have kept doing it if he didn't get caught or it didn't go under. So I think there's a lot of that is potentially going on here, and it's something to be cautious of and be wary of. I think it also ties into that Hong Kong story of classifying crypto as property. I think there's kind of an arbitrage, a regulatory arbitrage going on, or environment going on, to where there's a lot of these projects. And if we'll share another one, like a certain meme coin kind of went viral recently. There's a lot of these projects that aren't good for the whole space, that are popping up, that are purely designed to extract as much value as possible and enrich the founders and early collaborators on these projects. And this stuff to be aware of. And this is a window that's open, and hopefully it gets closed in one way or another going forward. But it's something to pay attention to and think about.
Yeah, well, we'll get to classifications and viewpoints on those with Mr. Gensler next. But Patrick, what's your take on this particular story?
I mean, for me, it's pretty simple, and I would like to talk about Gensler and what Gensler's doing. I just have to take a second and get it up because I'm trying to figure out how to share it. So,
yeah, let me add that here. Yep.
So here's the video I want to show you guys.
China's ploy to open its... Does it concern you, by the way, that your approach to the digital asset industry is actually driving this industry out of the United States?
Trying to drive it to compliance, and if they're not complying with the laws, then they shouldn't be offering their products.
Reclaiming my time. Madam Chair, I would like to enter into the record this Wall Street Journal article from April 14th, 2023, detailing China's ploy to open its banking system to crypto firms in an effort to seize an opportunity created by our hostile regulatory environment, which, Mr. Chair, you're a big part of.
Without objection.
Chair Gensler, FTX was domiciled abroad, and so is Binance, yet American consumers still had access to both. You can't really think that pushing this industry abroad is going to protect American consumers when it hasn't several times in the past on your watch. You say the crypto market is rife with non-compliance. However, existing SEC rules make no sense for blockchain-based companies, and following them would actually kill these businesses. Your regulatory style lacks flexibility and nuance, and as a result, you've been an incompetent cop on the beat, doing nothing to protect everyday Americans and pushing American firms into the hands of the CCP. Your intention to work against SEC mission and put American investors in harm's way has been made very apparent, sir. It's been a year and a half since you've appeared before this committee. You need to answer to Congress about the issues that you've had with the SEC staff union, the work environment you've cultivated at the SEC that's led to hemorrhaging of senior staff, the intellectual inconsistency of your regulatory treatment towards Bitcoin spot ETFs, and your politicization of capital formation opportunities.
That's all they'd let him say.
Well,
But he was on a roll. I watched him get grilled over and over and over again.
Yeah, and he still wouldn't answer whether Ethereum was a security or commodity.
Yeah.
No, he wouldn't. And then there was even one of the guys who took a stab. Did you guys hear how he took a stab there?
No.
About
I think he went through like his history.
I mean, I have a totally different perspective on that.
Okay, listen to this one. No, this is really cool. You guys have got to listen. This one, if you guys haven't seen this as a group, this is the one.
while you're pulling that up, I just want to, people are like, oh my gosh, Gary Gensler got grilled. And I'm not like a huge fan of like the regulatory bodies, the SEC, Gary Gensler, but I can't rule out that guy was just paid by deep crypto pockets to push these crypto interests that just want to keep the gravy train rolling of, creating these unregistered securities and defrauding
All right.
investors.
Can you guys look at this?
Watch, Patrick.
Hey, real quick, last question. I think it might have came up. You were Hillary Clinton's CFO in the campaign, right?
It's part of my history.
Were you? Yes or no?
In 2016.
Did you facilitate the payment for the Steele dossier since you were CFO of the Hillary Clinton campaign?
Sir.
Yes or no?
Sir.
Yes or no?
That was not.
You're under oath, Chairman Gensler. Yes or no?
I know. I was not something I was aware of.
I just thought that was funny how he just like threw that in there. Like they didn't care. They just took the opportunity. I love that. I mean, man, that was great. Mr. What's his name? Donalds? Congressman Donalds?
Yeah, I don't know him.
That was great. I thought that was fun. Go ahead. Put the pressure on. The American people deserve to know the truth. And we need understanding of what they think Bitcoin is so we can navigate within their ridiculous systems and structures.
Well, I think part of it is, diffusion by confusion, right? They want you to be confused about it, and not even accountants know what to do with it half the time. So, like that just makes people steer clear of it. So that's one of the reasons that you could make a case that maybe the connection that he was making there between working for the Clintons back then and there is influence on crypto now. Maybe that connection still exists. We just don't know how it's all going to play out. Maybe the Clintons have maybe they have the $1 million wallet. Who knows at this point? Anything could play out this way. So that's pure speculation there. All right. Well, our final crypto story here is something that, as Dylan was mentioned earlier, meme coins. So Dylan, you want to explain this meme coin? What's going on with Pepe coin these days?
Yeah. So
I'll try not to laugh, guys.
Yeah. So following up on the video about regulation, politicians that are pro crypto,
Don't show the
and
picture, Jeff. Get it off.
and then Gary Gensler just getting grilled. This industry definitely needs regulation. Right, because Pepe is a meme coin that's I don't even know how it got created. Someone probably pushed a button.
I know. I know the story behind Pepe coin.
You know how it got created?
Yes.
Okay.
Pepe is it's a mascot, you could say, for the 17th letter group.
Yeah, I know what like the mascot,
okay.
But the coin, the concept is like this coin that can be created by anyone and then pumped to the moon. They can just print themselves a bunch of tokens and then mass market it or hope for some sort of viral, virality of the coin. And then now they have enough liquidity to basically extract a ton of money at scale from a market. And so like that's an issue, because what we've seen like with a lot of the crypto cycles in the past, that when you've reached tops, and conveniently we've seen some of the major coins, Bitcoin and Ethereum, fall off from their relative local peaks. You've seen meme coins come about and shoot up. We've seen it with Doge, we've seen it with Shiba, a bunch of these other ones, and that typically indicates some sort of top in the market. And it's just like, is there a difference? What's the clarity here on what these things are? Who can create these? Who can launch them? And of course, you have a lot of like malicious actors behind the scenes that are creating these tokens, and they are basically creating these pump and dump schemes to extract as much value as possible from the market. And so, like, I think that requires some form of regulation, or at least social consensus on like what people value and what people don't value.
Yeah, I think meme coins, like some take off and get like their own like we mentioned. What was the effect that you mentioned? I'm drawing a blank. Metcalf, thank you. Oh. So you got Shiba and you got Doge that were originally meme coins, but there was a huge network. There's a Shiba army. There's lots of people behind Doge, and they eventually, like, they still don't have a great use case yet, but they're still very popular. But meme coins, they come from memes, and with 20,000 projects out there, maybe there's a call for regulation. So,
well, don't forget, guys, part of the Fed Now project is to allow decentralized voting. So that's one idea that has been taken already to fruition. We know that's part of the plan, is to allow your Fed Now app to vote on local and federal issues. So one of the things that we're going to see is probably some true version of that come out. But the question is, how do you identify a true user? And these are the Web3 solutions that come to play by identifying an individual user, by verifying that each individual has a social security number, and even like a death switch for them too, when the social security becomes inactive. So these are the things that you could do when you have a system that truly is decentralized.
Yeah. And well, guys, we've had a lot of good content, a lot of good conversations here. We could probably talk even more about the different things that we've come across, but I've got not one, but two, but three stories for the history and woo-woo section here. So let me first off, like for those of you who don't know, we're recording on Thursday, which happens to be April 20th, which is a significant date in the cannabis industry, 420. I don't know if people not understand. People probably know that association of 420, but where did 420 come from? Some people think, a lot of younger people think it came from a proposition vote in California because they number their propositions, vote yes, no, on prop this or prop that. And there was prop 420, which I think was the one to legalize for weed in California, but it goes much older than that. And the real reason it goes back to a group back in California, I believe it was, back in 1971 in Marin County. They would meet on their campus at 420, and they would continue to, it's at San Rafael High School. And that group became the like, hey, 420, and it all became the code word for weed. So I don't know if you guys knew that story, but it goes back almost, it's, almost as like back to when Nixon took away the gold standard. So interesting that we had 50 plus years of this 420 standard. So for those of you celebrating or just medically using it for whatever purposes, and enjoy your 420
celebrating or medically using, Jeff, you're like skirting around that. For those of you potheads, be safe out there. Like that's how you say it. If you smoke weed, don't drive and smoke.
Do it legally.
Yeah, and it's very interesting.
Illegal activities.
Oh, it is legal in Oregon, though. It is probably legal in lots of states, isn't it?
It's legal in Colorado, in most private places.
And that becomes another whole other topic about why the states are allowed to have some legalities, but at the federal level, it's not. So that's a different conversation altogether. So state sovereignty, states technically have more power than the union if they actually enact it. So that's a different story. But all right, our second story on the woo-woo history lesson here. So the second one, this is a little out there, but I don't know if you guys saw the story. There's lots of stories, but maybe you missed this one. But New Mexico researchers decided to transform dead birds into drones. And this has been a conspiracy theory for a while now that some birds are drones. And here we go. We have a picture of a really ugly drone that was made out of a dead bird and converted to it. So I'm going to let Patrick absorb that while I'll let Dylan go first and say, hey, Dylan, are these flying around the Colorado area?
I mean, I haven't had any that I know of hit my windows, but I'm sure there are some out there. I mean, they've been using animals for all sorts of missions over the years, and so it wouldn't surprise me they would use camouflage of a bird to disguise a drone. Like, of course they try that. If they can get away with it, just have it perch on a tree. Like who's going to pay attention to it? Only the weird bird watchers would pay attention to those things. And then you got weird drone watchers now.
Yeah, the only risk there, I guess, is if AI gets into the drone, then you have dead birds attacking everyone, and we end up with the Alfred Hitchcock kind of moment. So, Patrick, I don't know if you've seen the movie The Birds, the classic from Hitchcock, but what are your takes on these lovely drones that are out there, and what is this valuable research that people are doing at the university?
I mean, I agree, Dylan. It doesn't surprise me that it's out there. Again, I don't think, as long as we have nothing to hide, then it doesn't really scare me, right? So I'm not really scared by them being out there. I'm just out there living my life, a normal guy. But I do think that it is a concern for privacy. I don't know why they would be surveilling like the citizens. So I guess for me, I have to have trust in the system at some level that if they're using these, it's for a good reason and it is for our betterment. Like, I don't see any effects of them coming in and raiding our houses and taking our weapons or anything like that. But should that happen, then I think we'll be very thankful for those weird bird watchers who can tell you the difference.
Yeah, if they're doing it for, altruistic reasons or to understand the migration patterns of birds or something like that to get closer data, sure. But I think it was interesting that he said that something is out there. That kind of leads into my third story of like little
What
X Files.
What bucket?
So the first two stories I'm going to say are bucket one. I mean, we know
What bucket is this one?
This one has parts. I would say it has parts of all three buckets, and we'll go through each one. So this one, first off, the first part of the bucket. We got multi-bucket applications here. So this one, I don't know if you guys heard, but this happened yesterday, and there was a hearing that in front of Congress about UFOs. And now I think they're called UAPs because UFO is too conspiracy. So now they called. I don't even remember what UAP stands for, but they said that there were 650 potential UFO sightings. The number of UFO sightings are much, much higher in the last 18 months, according to Cliff High, from what I heard. And I know, Patrick, you asked me this question. When's the last time that there was a hearing on Capitol Hill about UFOs? And the answer, according to Wikipedia says it was 1969. So the reason that I'm talking about, there's just twofold. And this is where we get a little bit into the conspiracy theory and bucket two. So bucket two now is the Alta reports that Cliff High used to run. And his data would have temporal markers. And what they would say, like significant events, like things would happen about this time when this event happened. Like he actually was, I think he was 85 days in advance of the 9/11 event. He said something similar. He didn't say obviously what would happen, but the reports hinted at it. These other temporal markers, there's three temporal markers that are in a group, and sometimes they're grouped together, and they tend to associate. They'll have it happen about the same time. One is $600 silver, one is the banks going down, and the third one is that UFOs make a big appearance on the national scene or maybe even the global scene, which could, if you think about it, it could be a false flag, but I think it could be, what better event could they have to unify the planet and say, we really need a one world government and a one world currency and to all be unified against what this potential is happening. So there's your bucket three part, as I put pieces together, that maybe this does happen about the time when things are falling apart in the economic system, and tying this all together. So Dylan, I know it's bucket three, but what are your thoughts on that theory?
Oh man, I don't know. Like I really want to believe. I want to believe in aliens so badly. I don't want them to just be some conspiracy made up by the government. Like, I would much prefer, maybe not. Part of me would much prefer if they're introducing aliens now, because now is the time we need to call in, our big brother basically to come save us because we've kind of messed things up. We need some help, and so we're calling in our aliens that we've been in communication with for these years, because clearly they haven't destroyed us yet. So yeah, maybe that'd be a good thing. But then part of me is like, man, if we're dealing with aliens now, I don't know if we're advanced enough to even stand our own ground. So we had to make some pretty big compromises in order to get their help. They have all of the leverage. So maybe it's not a good position to be in. Maybe we need to wait 20 more years for, I don't know, or maybe the aliens are going to save us from AI. But it seems to be more like a conspiracy to distract people. I mean, that's probably the most likely thing, rather than any real aliens.
Keep in mind that it may not be like, they may not show like, hey, here's an alien, but they could show that here's UFOs and that what's going on, and create hysteria, create things like, hey, there are things in the sky, like a Project Bluebeam that we talked about earlier, where they have these holograms that look like UFOs. And I think there was a big sighting. I think it was in Arizona, where like even the governor saw it. And these lights that just came over, and like 7,000 people saw it in one night. It was one of the most record viewing of a UFO sighting, and they never had a clear answer. But the best answer was it was an experiment of Project Bluebeam. Yes, Patrick, that did happen. I could find that story too for you. But yes, it was probably the most recorded UFO sighting, and it was at night, and it was a bunch of lights, and they thought it was, it was reported like a stealth bomber. I think it was Arizona.
Yeah, they wouldn't do it over Texas. People would shoot it.
But Patrick, what's the plausibility of that false flag event coming down the pike? I mean, could you see a scenario where that could be a driver towards a one world government?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't think Thanos is coming, but my faith is in God and Glocks. So as long as the aliens stay far away from me, we're going to be all good. I can get along with anyone. I might even learn to love some of them, I guess, if that's really what happens. But like, just don't attack me. I don't care if I'm inferior to you. I'm still going to come at you with all of my Glocks and God. In Jesus' name, I'm going to shoot you. I don't know. I don't want to deal with aliens. It's not a life I'm hoping for, Dylan. I don't know why you'd wish these things upon us. Like, I wish I would find out there's aliens out there. I don't want any of that. I don't think they want my Bitcoin. I don't think there's anything I could do to like negotiate with them. You know, I'm a lover, not a fighter. I'm not looking to fight anybody, you know? So like, maybe if the aliens out there, like if they could just find a way to do it like peacefully and reveal yourself to us and be like, hey, but we're actually the good guys, like the Men in Black kind. Look, like we just killed Nancy Pelosi or something. And then everyone would be like, hey, you are cool. You know, something to get us on the same page, but like, don't come eat our children. Like, those are not the kind of aliens I want. You know what I mean? Like, can you guys see how
That's a good
you shouldn't
criteria.
ask me these hypothetical questions because I just don't like, I want to shoot them all.
Friendly aliens, not children eating aliens.
Yeah.
You know, like if there was a ghost, I'd like to see Casper, you know, show up as Casper, have a fun voice. Hey, I'm a ghost. Like, we're good. But you got the other creepy ghosts, the ones hiding up in the corner, jumping out, pretending to look like nuns, you know, to eat your face. I'm going to scream and I'm going to shoot like that, you know? So it's all about presentation, guys. So if aliens, if you're watching, like, hey, just come in peace, you know, we'll accept you in peace. We're Americans. We accept anything.
Luckily, like, you know, when you're talking about the children eating aliens, like even things on our planet don't want to
My
eat
kids
humans.
watch my show. Mason, Abigail, don't watch this part.
No, I'm just saying, like even like most animals that eat other animals don't want to eat humans. Like, we're not even very appetizing for the animals that like eat and kill other things. They will eat us, but like in general, we're not really much of a desirable target for most of these creatures. So like, you know, aliens are different, but they'd have to be really different to go out of their way to come here to eat us.
Yeah, I don't know where I would transition from alien cannibalism. I don't know where I go with that segment, but
I just texted Jeff, said put an advisory on this, like it's not suitable for kids. I'm serious. If my son listens to this, Jeff, he is gonna have nightmares. I'm gonna have nightmares, man. Guys, Jeff, can we agree to talk less bucket 3 stuff? Can we just stick to bucket 2?
If you want to scare kids, just have them watch Monsters Inc. and tell them it's real.
If one of you guys post on here, this is it. This is it. Someone must put a 3 on here. If you post a 3 on here, I know you like talking this stuff too. If there is no 3 for like several weeks in a row, Jeff, we need to not talk about it because you're scaring everyone off. If you relate to me, don't put a 3.
I never said aliens were going to eat your face. I never said any of that. I never said any consumption of aliens.
I don't want to
of
talk
humans.
about any of this. This is frightening. I'm gonna have nightmares.
Your mind went to aliens eating.
Right, but it's that kind of hysteria is like why this is deemed as possibly a very large false flag and one of the last ones that they could pull to try and keep control and push towards a new world order, one world government. So
yeah, there'll be hysteria. I'll be hysterical.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. If you tell me there's aliens outside and I get proof that they're there and I see stuff happening, man, I'm gonna lose my crap. Like that's really gonna happen. So prepare. If that's what's really happening, guys, be prepared for us to not hear anything else you're saying because all we're gonna see is aliens. And we're not going to be comfortable with that shit. We don't want it. You know what I mean, guys?
I think people need to make peace with the thought that they're not alone in the universe. That would be a very egotistical thing for human beings to think. I've
heard of Jesus. Maybe we could talk about Jesus and then we'll all be friends. You know, I don't know.
You know, I'm going to talk about aliens and we talk about that. You know, we're going to talk about we'll do that on another show. We will talk about aliens in the Bible. I'm more than happy talking about that.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
The Elhoim. We keep going over this. The Elhoim.
Elohim is the name of God in the Hebrew Bible. Elohim
it's
is
the
the
plural
name
of
God.
El.
The Nephilim?
Elohim is God.
No, it's not. It is
That is the
assumed to be
name of
God.
God.
It's assumed to be because it doesn't translate. That's why I keep bringing up the Naked Bible. The Elohim has no translation, nor does El. And I also noticed this. The Cliff Hyde pointed this out, which I never made this connection before. But Superman's last name is El.
Israel. It's the name of God in the Old Testament in Israel. That's what they called him. Elohim, the singular Eloah.
In what version of the Bible, Patrick?
The Holy One.
Oh, the one full of holes. So okay.
The Holy Bible, Jeff. Like the Bible that every Catholic, Christian, Muslim, like the first 5 books of the Bible, especially that's called the Torah. That's a normal thing, bro. Elohim, it's in the Bible, like the Holy One.
So
I don't
Patrick,
know the naked one that you speak of. I've never heard of that Bible being used in any religion.
do you believe in? So do you believe that every history book that was written is accurate?
History is written by the winners, so I'd say no.
Okay, so then why would you believe the accuracy of the writing of the Bible?
Is historically supported and supported by many other different books, different other philosophers, theologians, like different doctrine all over the world. It's been in scriptures. It's been in different like other religion too, reference similar topics, reference with science, history. It all fits.
Well, to be fair, the church has a very well-known history of suppressing inconvenient facts and truths.
That I believe
Copernicus-
too. I don't believe in humans at all. I believe humans are corrupt and they're going to turn anything good bad, anything they touch. I don't believe in organized religion at all. Like, I think people are the worst part of Christianity, of my Christian friends. Like, they're some of the worst people I know. So I'm not going to hide behind that. But when we talk about the word Elohim, Elohim is referenced in the Israeli Bible. Like, that's what that means.
What I think a big thing that I learned was the translation of a lot of these terms over time. The meaning of these words has significantly changed. Like I took a class. It was on angels, powers, and demons, and it was basically like how I think one thing I took away that I remember is that the word demon the way we think of it today was not how the origin of the word is not what the origin of the word implied, but through translation, it's evolved into being what we see it today, even though when it originated, it didn't mean the same thing.
Yeah, it's very difficult to trace everything back because the book is as allegedly old as this has been written and rewritten and translated, and very few people when they were originally writing this and transcribing it could even read and write. So they were all hand transcribed and they were all based on they go back into one funnel of information and then question it. So while you're saying that that's it's all around the globe and all these different theologians and such, but this all traces back to like the original text, which was pre-Hebrew or like those proto-Hebrew type texts. So that's what you have to go back to. And that's why I keep referring back to the Naked Bible, where some words just don't translate well.
Yeah, I think I could definitely enjoy doing some more research on that because, the reality is I'd like to understand that better too. I've had questions about, for example, the book of Enoch, which I have been told is doctrinally sound and supports scripture and is biblically like congruent. Then why don't any of our pastors talk about it? Like, why is no one able to even have the discussion that like we talk about a lot
it's
of
not in the Bible anymore. It's not one of the 66 books.
I don't know. It never was. It has to do with something called like the canonization process. And I remember reading about that back in the day. And that was never made sense.
I believe that's how they wound up with the King James version of the Bible, is the canonization.
Yeah, so I want to like do more research for sure about that. But to me, there are lots of things I question. Whether there's a God is not a question I have. Like, I don't believe that this stuff just poof kind of came to be. And like my experience alone makes me believe that there is no way that I could have gone through the stuff I've gone through without some grace from something. Like I've just gone through too much to feel like it comes out. But the thing that we can't debate is the reality that humans will take something good and pervert it. And there's no way you can expect them to tell the complete and absolute truth, which is why I think it's okay for us to question things that we may question, things that we don't understand completely. I think that's part of the process. I encourage everyone to wrestle against their own beliefs and convictions, because the worst that you're going to do is prove yourself right. The best that you could do is be proven wrong and learn something new. So I don't see like a downside to learning, and we can all be different. This is like a good time to say that, is even though Jeff and I and Dylan may have very different beliefs, we could still get along, and we love each other, and there's a lot that we'd be willing to do for each other. So I think the reality is it doesn't matter what we believe as much as like how we treat each other. That is what translates out into the world. And when we see the things that are coming out trying to scare the population into freaking out because of UFOs, we kind of look at that and say, well, what's the end goal? Like, really, what are they trying to do? They're trying to create fear and panic and hysteria. And so I'm going to need a guy like Jeff saying, Patrick, it's okay. Remember, it's just a projector. Oh yeah. Good thing. What are you doing, Patrick? Is that a rocket launcher? Yeah, I was really scared, Jeff, So it's like, we're going to not blow each other up because of people like you who are going to keep us safe and sane and remind us that these are the games going on. Let's be ready for them, no matter how crazy it sounds.
Well, this is part of the foundation of the show, right? We want to encourage what's really been lost over the years, which is thinking for yourselves, question everything, have these conversations. Like, do your own research, figure it out, and just like don't believe what you're necessarily told, but consider possibilities, no matter how remote, what bucket they fall into, and then prove them wrong, and then you can throw them away. But if you can't prove them wrong, like, well, I can't throw it out of the bucket yet. That's just how they come to be. So we reached the end of the show. It's been a fantastic one. Yet again, keep getting better and better. So Dylan, what are your final parting words and thoughts for today?
Oh man, we covered so much. I think one thing to go back to is, is follow the money for a lot of this stuff. When we see talk on regulation, and we see politicians pro and against things, and countries announcing certain things, is follow the money. There's a lot of good money out there, and there's a lot of bad money out there as well that is trying to influence the systems and the dynamics at play.
Absolutely, Patrick. Final thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to challenge you guys. If you have resonated with anything we've said, make sure to share it with someone, because the reality is someone around you probably feels the same way and would be happy to have someone to be in their community of crazy people who are trying to get ready and be prepared and not scared.
Absolutely. And I think I just want to go back to the foundation of this show. And I think we're about half, like we've done it for almost not even yet a half year yet, but it keeps getting better and better. There's so much content. And I want the environment that we're trying to create was, we want you, the audience, the viewer right now, to be the fourth chair at our table at the bar that we're having a drink and joining us, just having a conversation on different topics. And like, what did you hear? What are your thoughts? And we're just back and forth. And no matter what we wind up talking about, or what our opinions are, whether they match or they're different, or what you hear, we're all friends and support one another from the beginning throughout and to the end, so that you're prepared and not scared. So with that said, and on behalf of Dylan and Patrick, I wish you all well until we talk next time, and be prepared and not scared.